Bonjour. I'd like to explain U.S. Patent 6630507 for non-scientists. For the gold, I know that a lot of people don't know about this patent. I've written several letters to the editor in the Huntington Daily News about it, but I have it pulled up on another screen behind the green screen here. U.S. Patent issued 6630507 to the U.S. Health and Human Services, filed on 2/12/2001. Patent lists the use of certain cannabinoids found in with the cannabis sativa plant as useful in certain neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and HIV dementia. Very, very interesting. It seems like this plant is healthy for your brain. Neurodegenerative disease is something that destroys your brain. So anything that could be destroying your brain, such as medications that the government prescribes for schizophrenia, which I've been wrongly diagnosed as. I'm an insomniac for sure. That's definitely, let's see here, as I read down. Cannabinoids have been found to have antioxidant properties unrelated to NMDA receptor antagonism. One of the earliest theories, cannabinoids bound to cellular extracts of brain proteins that were related to the NMDA receptor. For those that don't know what that is, NMDA is ecstasy on the street, or X or E or whatever dealers call that nowadays. I don't go for that. Some people do. Just like Abby from NCIS, possibly she listens to rave music, so maybe she rolls, who knows. Whatever. Cannabinoids are found to have particular application as neuroprotectants. Why would something that protects your brain be illegal? That's awfully suspicious. For example, in limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults, such as stroke or trauma. Say you have a horrible accident, or a lot of days nowadays the NFL is embracing cannabinoids for the treatment of concussions sustained during football hits, plays, whatever, what have you. But let's see here. Parkinson's, it's one disease I've studied a little bit about. I don't know a whole lot about. Alzheimer's disease, I know a little bit about the tau omega proteins that bind to your brain. Possibly marijuana inhibits that through endocannabinoid receptor antagonism. Possibly in vitro or in vivo. I would have to look up an article on that. Let me do so right now. Hopefully this is recording still. Yes, the endocannabinoid system. Let's go Google Scholar on that. Google was actually more of a reputable thing now. We used to be able to use that in school whenever I was in. I'm going back, possibly. Here's an article from A. Tabarik. Damn it. Hello? Yes, it is. Ah, yes, I did. That's interesting. Maybe it was down farther down the road that I got picked up. I know it was an undercover officer and certain. Yeah, I mean my wallet was lost, so I mean I just really needed to know. It wasn't last night. It was like 3, 4 weeks ago. Between that time frame, 2 to 4 weeks ago. I don't know. I've been walking along. No, no, I didn't. I didn't say that. I didn't think I said that. I meant 2 to 4 weeks ago. If I did say that, yes. Wasn't the Boulevard? It was 99 Junction roundabouts, or somewhere around there. Was I on the interstate? I was on the right side of the road, I believe, and yeah, I didn't even know walking along the side of the road was a ticket until recently. I was off the right away of 99 and several officers. Yes, roundabout I-99 Junction and I think Pinecroft, somewhere around there. 220. Maybe it was 220. I don't know. Ask around your undercover officers for the Oh, you don't have undercover officers in that department? That's interesting. Okay, maybe does the state police have undercover officers possibly? Uh-huh. Maybe it was Duncansville because I looked at your website there earlier and maybe it was Duncansville Police Department that had undercover officers. They cover their officers between here and Tyrone, which is where I was trying to get to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Possibly it was an officer with the Hollidaysburg State Police Department. Southern end of the county. Yes, it was Ennis Township. Yeah, yeah, possibly it was more Bellwood area. Could you have one of your kind officers check that area as well? As yeah, I lost my oh, that's out of your jurisdiction. Shoot. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, okay. That'll be my next phone call. Thank you, thank you. Yep. You too. Bye bye. Is this thing still on? Had to report a wallet missing. There goes these days. Let's see. Uh, yeah, still rolling. Okay, yeah. Back to my explanation of U.S. Patent 6630507. Yes, it's a very interesting patent. Cannabis sativa conclusions. Let me reference the study, of course. Eduardo Tibirica, Diabetology and Metabolic Syndrome 2010. Received 26 March '09, accepted 21 January 2010, published 21 January 2010. So this is a published study that's it's fairly recent, so they had to be up on their research. Yes. The endocannabinoid system has important physiological functions not only in the central nervous system but also in peripheral tissues. The activation of central CB1 receptors, particularly in hypothalamic nuclei, that's in the hypothalamus, which is in the brain, according to my physiological studies. The hypothalamus tends to regulate temperature. It regulates some certain autonomic nervous functions like digestion, temperature control, sex drive, mood, behavior, and limbic system, which it regulates. Yes, it says right here, feeding behavior, especially in the control of the intake of palatable food. So people who have eating disorders will be greatly helped by the use of marijuana. And the periphery, cannabinoid receptors are present in adipocytes, that means fat cells, skeletal muscle, your bones, healing up limbs and stuff like that, gastrointestinal tract, and liver. Liver, yeah. Let's kill those alcoholics. Let's make sure that they're dead because when you mix prescription meds with alcohol, the damage to your liver is greatly enhanced and modulating energy metabolism. Let me see if we're still rolling because this computer is Chinese made. Now, Chinese make very good electronics. Yeah, still rolling. Yeah. I hope that it doesn't. That was about a 3 minute, 3 minute talk. Cast my computer or whatever. Okay, let's keep digging here. Historical aspects. Cannabis sativa, marijuana or cannabis, has been cultivated by man since approximately 4000 BC. I believe it originated in China. Chinese. Very advanced at the time, very ahead of Western civilization as far as technology, knowledge, warfare. Kept the British out for years, and even though they had gunpowder, which the Chinese invented, but that's a fat sidetrack statement. Known since 3300 BC. Several chemical constituents of cannabis have already been identified, but it's mainly psychoactive. That means mood changing really, consciousness changing, because it's all about freedom of consciousness rather of mind, or freedom of mind. I call it cognitive liberty. Even though several naturally occurring agonists, that means something that binds to a receptor, have the endogenous, that means inside the cells, cannabinoid system, inside the body really. Cannabinoid system have been known since then. The discovery of this was in the 1930s, I believe, that these studies took place initially. The patent cites several studies. It's really complicated research. And most people can't jump through the hoops because there are many. You have to get it from Mississippi, UMass, and they really suck at producing quality herb as ganja, whatever your slang term is. Jeez. It's tough to be a scientist sometimes. Okay, let me keep rolling here. We're gonna make the news, possibly. Who knows? Maybe you guys can YouTube me. I'm not really up on how to use that on your YouTube channel. But in 1988, after reviewing all evidence brought forth in a lawsuit against government's prohibition of medicinal marijuana, which was how the medical marijuana movement got started in, I believe, California and a few other states, were the first ones to legalize marijuana medicinally, and then you had the gangster rap that followed. Judge Young recommended that the DEA allow marijuana to be prescribed as medicine, but the DEA has refused. You know why? It's been their cash crop since Anslinger's propaganda against Anslinger's quite atrociously racist and unreasonable propaganda. Let me take another sidetrack to the other more current debate about whether marijuana is highly addictive or more addictive than other drugs, or it's another rant on marijuana. I know, I really have to stop it. But another thing that the Muslims like to push on people is schizophrenia diagnoses. Schizophrenia and marijuana. Scholarly articles for schizophrenia and marijuana. Okay. This could be true, possibly, but who knows? When you put it in mumbo jumbo, anything is possible. Cannabinoid receptor 1 gene polymorphisms and marijuana misuse interactions on white matter and cognitive deficits in schizophrenia. Very, very high depth. I have to give a shout out. Bang-Chun Hu, Thomas H. Wasinek, Steven Zeibel, Nancy C. Andreasen, Department of Psychiatry, University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine, Iowa City, Iowa, USA. DUI number, yes, this is a better reference. May 2011, volume 128, issues 1 to 3, pages 66 to 75 in the Journal of Schizophrenia research. Yes, that's what a joke. Um, Marijuana exposure during the critical period of adolescent brain maturation may disrupt neuromodulatory influences of endocannabinoids, and increase schizophrenia susceptibility. Cannabinoid receptor 1, CB1/CNR1, is the principal brain receptor mediating marijuana effects. No study to date has. Hold on, let me make sure I'm still rolling. Stops your time when people steal your stuff. But, you have to walk along this way around. But anyway, it's, no study to date has systematically investigated the impact of CNR1 on quantitative phenotypic features in schizophrenia and interrelationships with marijuana misuse. We genotype 235, not a very big study, but I mean, you have to find the genes, and you gotta get schizophrenic people to agree to it. Using 12 tagged single nucleotide polymorphisms, TSNP, capital S, the T is lowercase, and so is the S, that account for most of CB1 coding region genetic variability. Patients underwent higher resolution anatomic brain magnetic resonance scan and cognitive assessment. Almost a quarter of the sample met DSM marijuana abuse, 14%, or dependence, 8%. That's in the DSM. Let's see. Let's skip to the fat of the article, the meat of it. Patients with marijuana abuse/dependence had smaller frontotemporal WM volumes than patients without heavy marijuana use. This is in adolescents, and I don't know what they call adolescents. Is that under 16, under 18, or under 14, or whatever, I'm guessing under 18 because that's the standard definition of adolescence. Myself, I didn't use until I was 15, and not often because of lack of availability at the time. I didn't make many friends, but whatever. That's not me. That's kids these days. You probably don't want to constantly hear voices and hallucinate. That would not be fun. You might be a little bit Hannibal Lecter, but this is going to be a long video probably, so I'll save that. I'll try and cut the rants and whatnot. In this comprehensive evaluation of genetic variants distributed across the CB1 locus, that's a region of the genetic code of the brain matter that the DNA was extracted from. CNR1 genetic polymorphisms. I mean, you don't have to use brain DNA, but all DNA has, what do you call them? I'm missing the word here. Genetic modification. The cells of your DNA modify themselves. Modificate, that's the Bushism. Regulate themselves by DNA methylation and histone modification. When the DNA unravels for a nerve cell to replicate itself, I don't know much about nerve cells, but I'm speaking generally in terms of what cell biology I do know. I'm only a general biology degree. But whenever a cell modifies itself, the histones unravel, and histone modification is one thing that that DNA that's being researched in terms of a variable in the expression of DNA. See, what they're looking at is more of the expression of brain DNA, and this is so complicated that it would take possibly space aliens to autopsy the brains of people and put them back together and whatnot to Humpty Dumpty shit to figure this out. But I left some things out, but I did reference the study number and journal. I hope that came through to yes understand this in depth. But more interestingly, there were significant RS127200071 genotype bi-marijuana use interactions on white matter volumes and neurocognitive impairment, suggestive of gene/environmental interactions. It's actually dash, but slash, whatever. For conferring phenotypic abnormalities in schizophrenia. In this comprehensive evaluation of genetic variants distributed across CB1 locus, whatever. Yeah, they're in the brain, so CB1 loci. I don't know the articles, but whatever. In this comprehensive evaluation of genetic variants distributed across the CB1 locus, CNR1 genetic polymorphisms were associated with brain WM white matter brain volume variation among schizophrenia patients. Our findings suggest that heavy cannabis use in the context of specific CNR1 genotypes may contribute to greater WM volume deficits and cognitive impairment, which in turn increases schizophrenia risk. Schizophrenia as a disorder is a developmental disorder. From what I researched, concluded about schizophrenia, what's out there, what's known is that the brain prunes itself during adolescence, and you are, what's the word? More susceptible, according to research, if you're a chronic yeah, I like to use that word. If you're a chronic user of marijuana rather than a non-habitual, infrequent, non-dependent, I'm off marijuana. I can take it or leave it, but it does affect my sleep temporarily. Smoking it for months on end until it cleans out of the fat cells of your system is a problem, because the body has a very high affinity. Body cells have a very high affinity to marijuana, whereas brain cells don't. And I say marijuana, but THC has a greater affinity for those cells than CBD does. Cannabidiol. Damn it, these words are complicated. There are other cannabinoid variants like THCBN, cannabis. Oh man, there's so many. John W. Huffman at the University of Mississippi was one of the first to investigate the effects, I believe on rats. This is a classic study. In 1961, at the university study, they're studying what they called cannabinoid isomers, which are, they are, man, how do I explain this simply? They're molecules that are slightly different than they are psychoactive. Some are, some aren't, of course. I don't know. I haven't researched that in depth. But I mean, they do have affinity for the cannabinoid receptors throughout the body in the endocannabinoid system, which is the system that controls things that bind to anandamide. Now, anandamide is a molecule produced by the brain. It's the name of anandamide comes from the Sanskrit word for bliss. The Sanskrit was a language spoken by people in India back in I don't know what times, Kama Sutra times, 2,000 years ago, whatever. It was a Sanskrit word for bliss, and the sadhus are people of India, and I don't know too much about Hindi religion or anything, Mr. Nick Miller would be a perfect person to inquire more about the Hindi religion and Hindu religious beliefs. But these people, I think they're hidden away most of the time. I don't know whether they eat brains in their dead relatives or follow ancestral worship. But one thing about the people of India, is that some of them worship their ancestors. It's an ancestral worship sort of a thing, sort of a belief system. Like the people of, I don't want to insult Hindus. The people of the Hindi religion or whatever, it's a very complicated religion. They worship many gods, polytheist. But anyway, the Saudi people, getting back to that, they do nothing much more than smoke marijuana and eat food, I believe. But they follow fasting rituals. They're kind of like the Rastafari, no more in the West, as the people followers of Bob Marley. It's Rastafari is a religion that's not really followed by Americans who aren't of Jamaican descent. Um, the Jamaicans really love their marijuana, as stereotypically suggested in movies and whatnot. And of course, everyone knows Cheech and Chong, classics like Harold and Kumar, and I don't know. More recently, you got freaking Harold and Kumar's classic. But then you got bands like Cypress Hill that really represent Cypress. Be Real is my favorite article, or singer and artist, I should say. But what they don't want you to know is that many operations of the government are financed already somewhat under the books, off the table by marijuana prohibition, and it's an evil system. It's very evil because chemists like myself know about things about stuff. I don't know how to make things step by step a lot of times, but I can give the basic outline of how it's done. I understand the basic molecular transformations that something goes through, but to go and like cook things up step by step, it requires almost a master's or a PhD to do such a thing. But what can I say? I'm digressing for the topic. Yes, Mr. Huffman from a family member, I believe, of Justin Huffman from Penn State Altoona. Shout out to Penn State Altoona, of course. My educational background. Also, shout out to Perlov Shetty, one of my favorite engineers. He was there when I was there in 2009 before I transferred to the state and went off the beaten path and had to regroup, reform, and get my general biology degree. But I'll keep the rant going here on topic. Yes, they studied several different cannabinoids. There's a whole list of them, and the list blows my head. Because you can even Wikipedia this now. Wikipedia is becoming more of a, shall I say, reputable source, or it's at least a starting point for your research because they reference the scientific articles. Not anyone, you have to have specific credentials to edit them now, the articles by Wikipedia. It's encyclopedias are slowly becoming obsolete. I believe they still print them, but and they give them Library of Congress numbers, of course. That's a certain essential if you get a book published, I believe. But anyway, back to Huffman, John W. Huffman, not Justin. But I hope he has some research available. That'd be sweet. But anyway, these cannabinoids, which are probably now illegal by edict by the government, from the people who took JWH-10, which was also a receptor of the endocannabinoid system, but may have also been an MDA receptor antagonist, agonist, what have you. I should explain what antagonist and agonist means, but it's not really important to anyone that doesn't know science because they'll just get confused. Even if you're really interested, you can understand. Anyone can understand anything, sure. But these things bind to the receptors, and there's a huge difference whether they bind to the receptors in vivo or in vitro. Okay? In vivo means in a cellular context with other body cells. And the first thing that you do if you're looking at drug discovery is you might extract some proteins or receptors from a molecule, which requires a biochemical background. You can't do this in your house unless you have millions of dollars in your own lab and you can centrifuge things and like freeze fracture things and look for the receptors, find the receptors. Then you take those receptors and you put them over here and you culture some cells, a lot of yada yada, lots of high science requiring knowledge. I'm losing the words to explain because it's really complicated to just explain such a thing ad hoc, off the cuff. But yes, back to my original point. You extract those receptors and you get them and you put them in a test tube first, and you throw in the cannabinoid, whatever mix that you're going to pick. Say you're picking JWH18 mixed with JWH73 to adulterate, and that was a common spice mix back in the good times, back in like 2007, 2008, where this was being produced by German pharmaceutical companies. I don't know which one, but that was the word at least. And then they became illegal. Of course, people saw the profit motive, and they were really cheap because K2, as it was called at the time, or I never really got into synthetic cannabinoids. It was a couple of times that we tried them, just being kids, boys will be boys, whatever. And we tried them, and we were like, oh, that's really interesting, maybe a little. And then, like, see if you get any effects, wait several hours, and then you might, like, smoke something real quick. And that would be enough to get a little bit, oh man, I feel like I'm stoned. And it's like, it feels a lot like marijuana. And that was probably a good mix at the time. But personally, I was like, I don't trust it. I know that I can obtain, or quite simply on the streets. Not a lot of effort involved. I knew a lot of people who knew people, and sorry if I named any names, or that was fake. That was lying. Half the time I'm lying through my teeth. The other half, I'm doing great things for the world. I follow a halcyon philosophy. Do no wrong, but sometimes you might have to break following Hippocratic oath, if I was to take one ever. Do no harm to your patients. You've broken that oath if your Department of Health has a patent on something and you won't allow a patient to, the DEA won't allow a patient to be prescribed this. There were several people who sued and appealed all the way up to not only district court, but Supreme Court, and then I don't know how the levels go. I'm not a lawyer, but it goes all the way up to United States Supreme Court, and there are precedents on the books. They're on the books now, a lot of places. And the legal precedent now dictates that you can sue the federal or even possibly state government for not following the U.S.'s own Department of Health's ruling. And that's why medicinal cannabis, marijuana, is illegal, or legal in most states, and it's illegal in some places. Of course, they got wise with the CBD oil, and by government edict, I think, again, they legalized cannabinoid oil. But if you get into the thing with cannabinoids is it requires the plant itself makes things to, I don't want to say adulterate because that's construing, that's giving the impression that it's changed in a negative way, but I'll say counteract the high of this. If you watch the video "Should I Smoke Dope" by the journalist Nikki Taylor, or Nikki Tyler, I think it's Nikki Taylor. She's a British journalist, and it was one of my favorite documentaries about marijuana. She kind of botched a couple of things by getting really, really stoned, which was expected because she said herself she hadn't smoked marijuana since she tried it in college. And back then, the supply was weaker because the feds overrepresented, of course, because this was on the street at the time. Mexican marijuana or whatever was being, I don't want to say Mexican marijuana, but the main source of marijuana being smuggled at the time from documentaries I watched and from anecdotal accounts that I've been told by people are that the most of the supply on the streets was either homegrown, and this kind of marijuana is the species of marijuana, or this phenotype, to use a scientific term. A phenotype is a certain expression of a genome. There are GMO plants now, many people realize this, and these GMO plants can be changed. You could take a pea plant and you could cut in a gene, or you could selectively breed it many, many, many times, and you get the thing that you're looking for, sequence the DNA, and then you know that you got the right plant. I believe that this is how it should be done if you are to create a GMO plant, but I'm not going to get off on the GMO lecture topic thing. But it's ridiculous that we're hanging people for felonies, denying people student aid, denying people student housing, denying people the rights. Some advocates, such as Mark Emery, have spent life sentences for a plant. There's a book called Shoulda Robbed a Bank, where this guy had 20 pounds of marijuana that he grew himself. There's several British actors. Growers. How did I forget that word? Several languages. But yes, there are several British growers who have produced their own amount. I watched this one guy who had a greenhouse, and he had 20 pounds that he produced from a greenhouse. And they're super, super old plants. The plant will live forever if you don't kill it. There is no limit to how tall any plant can get. It just depends on at what point the cells go into senescence. Senescence is a state of the cell being not dead, but it stops growth mode. All of our body cells do this, and cancer is actually a disease where instead of going into senescence or dying as a cell is supposed to, that's either one of two fates of a cell that's born. It goes through its cell cycle, G1, G2, G3, G4, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then it divides, and then it does its thing, it differentiates, and then it becomes a cell that's useful in the body, and then possibly, like me just smoking a cigarette here, I will get rid of the smell from my place. But yes, a cell can either divide or it can go on and I lost my train of thought. A cell can either do its thing or it can die at any time. That's called apoptosis, programmed cell death. But if a cell does not undergo apoptosis whenever it takes damage, here's what can happen. your body has DNA repair enzymes. They're in your saliva, they're in your blood, they're in your brain, they're in your balls, your legs, whatever, you know. But there are DNA repair mechanisms that whenever the cell divides, it's not always clean and perfect. That's one thing that people who study science have to always realize, that science is never clean and perfect. There are many intricacies and things unforeseen and unintended consequences and lies and rumors and media misinformation and propaganda, and then you have the government meddling with laws and the federal government instead of the state government or the local government, or just like the dry and wet laws of prohibition. And where was I going with this rant? Yes, cannabinoids are one thing that that influence the endocannabinoid system. That I believe it controls hypothalamic regulation of the brain, and they're also, I've only spoken about CB1 receptors so far. There are CB2 receptors of the body rather than the brain, and these CB2 receptors. Let me look up. I'm not going to go through talking about G-coupled protein receptors and like all of that. Yes, but it says here CB2 is mainly expressed in immune cells of the endocannabinoid system, which is an interesting thing. Immune cells are one of the most genetically variable cells of the human body. We learned this in cancer physiology, or it doesn't even mean yeah, whatever. But let me reference some studies. It says in the CB1 system, predominantly express synaptically the receptors, the CB1 receptors, modulating the release of neurotransmitters. It says modulating rather than affecting, which is a very important thing to note about the study that I'm reading about. Is it an review? It's talking about regulation of food intake, which is the hypothalamic function. This is basically about why there's not why there's munchies, but why that's a side effect of a widely known side effect of marijuana use. Increased appetite, and which stops whenever you decrease use because it's no longer being upregulated by the brain through DNA methylation, temporary thing, and let's see. I want to stop the brain. But the review is a very good review, and it talks a little bit about the historical stuff. And this review is in diabetology and metabolic syndrome. Diabetes is another a disease that widely afflicts many people. Diabetes is a horrible thing where you have to inject yourself with insulin because your body doesn't make insulin to break down glucose, which feeds your system, feeds your body. I don't have diabetes. If I did, I'd probably be dead by now. Forgetting to file my taxes and get that refund because I didn't think it would be a huge thing, and I was worried about my FAFSA and whatever. Counter off the topic. Yes. I want to talk a little bit more about CB1 before I'm rambling, but I always do. Predominantly expressed presynaptically, that's before your nerves, your neurons, neural cells, release their neurotransmitters, which control signaling to your body of many things, many functions, including gamma aminobutyric acid. GABA is one thing that alcohol influence. I believe it either upregulates or downregulates gamma aminobutyric acid in the brain. Dopamine, that's a neurotransmitter that influences pleasure and learning. Noradrenaline, that's kind of like a adrenaline is a thing that, yes, we know about adrenaline, that car chases and shootings and fights and video games, sure, whatever. Noradrenaline is the precursor. Nor means, I believe, before in Latin. Let me make sure that I'm still rolling because the camera. Yes, 45. So I was aiming this to be an hour speech, but I don't care if it's an hour and a half or I go on for 3 hours. That's me. But let's see. No. Dopamine, glutamate. Glutamate is a thing that in plants, it's very essential for amino acid production. It's a plant will fix nitrogen, and we eat our nitrogen from food. So that's one thing that a plant will fix it from nitrates in the soil. But most plants, besides legumes, pea plants, think peas, think anything with the bacteria that produce it in there. It's a symbiotic relationship, and if you know that. But anyway, these plants fix their glutamate. They fix their nitrogen. They make their glutamate from it. We learned this in plant physio. And then the plant will take the glutamate. It takes the glutamate. It makes it into an amino acid, and then it makes it into another amino acid. And the plant's playing its shuffling game with those molecules to make any amino acid known in existence. These amino acids are precursors of proteins. Proteins are really a main currency in biological functions. Proteins influence your hair, your cell physiology, really everything that's important. There are lipid signaling things, but lipid rafts and all of that go into the biology of a cell, but I won't get into that because it's too complicated for the average person to understand or probably care about. It takes an asshole like me that likes science to care about it. And then you have, it says, and serotonin. Serotonin is a molecule that's also, it depends on how certain people's brains are wired really, but that's the main thing. But let me look up a little bit more about serotonin because I believe it's influential in perception of certain things. Serotonin, how it functions that it's out. Let me use Wikipedia because again, I say that Wikipedia is the simplest sort of thing. Okay. Here's one from Healthline that isn't Wikipedia. If you just Google serotonin, it comes up. And serotonin impacts every part of your body, it says, from your emotions to your motor skills. You know, and motor skills, you know. Yeah, you know. Serotonin is considered, I don't know, let me actually use the more complicated one. Put it in my own words. I should not stay in the chemistry of it. And I should talk about more of the cell biology rather than the biological standpoint of where it's biological standpoint of where it affects people rather than the chemistry of it. Yes. Serotonin is found primarily in the body's stomach and intestines. It helps control your bowel movements and function. Serotonin in the brain is thought to regulate anxiety, happiness, and mood. Low levels of the chemical have been associated with depression. Imagine that. You have SSRIs, which are a class of antidepressants, and you have tricyclic antidepressants. SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So it's a reverse antagonist thing, a reverse action thing that the drug SSRI, whether it be Paxil or whatever it be, it binds to the receptor in your brain, and the levels being low because you've experienced a shitty existence and it makes you depressed, it'll bond to that, and your brain thinks, "Oh shit, my serotonin's out of whack for several weeks," and then it boom upregulates it, and you should be game. And then it says chemical have been associated with depression and increased serotonin levels. I guess too much. Brought on by medication are thought to decrease arousal. That's arousal of the system, not sexual arousal. But yes, that's one effect of SSRIs, antidepressants if you take those. But yes, your doctor probably won't tell you that unless you ask your doctor. Serotonin in the brain is thought to regulate anxiety, happiness, and mood again. Serotonin is part of the reason why you become nauseous. Some people that drink, we call it getting turnt, I guess. And getting turnt means that like you drink too much and then you throw up, of course, because your body's trying to get rid of the poison, which alcohol is. Alcohol really is a poison, rather than much more so than marijuana. And the government made it more poisonous back in the days of alcohol prohibition with Capone shooting up Chicago and still going on, I guess. Chirac, they call it. But I digress. Yes. Let me get my straight. No. Do it. Okay, yes. Keep going on. Production of serotonin rises to push out noxious or upsetting food quicker in diarrhea. Very interesting. You learn something new every day. The chemical also increases in the blood, which stimulates part of the brain that controls nausea. So if you ever take too many antidepressants, if you're on these, I guess you can try it if you like puking, but whatever, if that's your thing. People that drink must like puking and whatever. This stimulates the part of the brain that controls nausea. So it stimulates your brain to produce to be nauseous. So antidepressants are poison pretty much. They're telling your body to be nauseous. Your brain it's telling your body's telling your brain to be nauseous because the SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor antidepressant, space alien, stimulates you to puke. It stimulates nausea. The chemical is also serotonin, which the antidepressants upregulate. This chemical is responsible for stimulating the parts of the brain that control sleep and waking. Serotonin, this chemical, serotonin, is responsible, which antidepressants upregulate again, is responsible for stimulating the parts of the brain that control sleep and waking. So if, let's see, back to my research article here, trusty research article. Whatever. I know it said it was a serotonin modulator. Most cannabinoids are modulator and not producer and not blocker. So it modulates this thing like anandamide would if the stimuluses that you receive from your environment or from your brain consciousness internally, whatever that is. Wind's howling. Yeah, wind. But another thing that serotonin does, this is a cool thing about serotonin, which I believe, this is really scary to me. Blood platelets release serotonin to help heal wounds. Imagine that. Platelets in your blood are a thing that blood platelets coagulate. Whenever coagulate means stick together and form a clot. A clot is something that blocks your disease. Like if I slice my face, my blood, the platelets would start to get released by response from serotonin, which is one reason why I got to touch this subject delicately because I've known people who do this. But people who cut themselves for fun, or people that punch themselves in the face whenever they're drunk, or punch each other, or get into fights with drunk people, and like they let's say you cut yourself and your body releases serotonin from your brain, so it helps you to feel good. Nevertheless, while you're causing damage to your body. Okay. So if you do that, don't do it. You might need to take a little small milligram dose of an antidepressant or whatever your thing is to enjoy and relax and be cognitively free and not be sick with your illness, psychological. But let's go on. Let me ramble on because this is a lot of shit. We're tired of it. Foreigners would actually love this because they would love to produce our marijuana, dope, whatever you want to call it, for us. Serotonin plays a role in bone health. This has been a study that, yes, let me pull up a study on this. Marijuana and bones. Jeez. Fucking computers. Google Scholar. Bones. Weed. Okay, brucellosis is a tendon condition that let's see, bones and bones, fundamentals of bone biology. Let me see, marijuana heals bones. Let me Google that, scholar that. Marijuana heals bone. Studies on bone fracture healing. Let's see, intraperitoneal injection. Not the right one. Don't know, weed. Yar. Let me search Israel, because Israelis are one of the main. It's talking about TGF-beta, which is a growth factor. Okay, but cannabis is really perspective. Here's one that I'll post to all you hearties that follow my page or whatever. Still indirect, you know. All you hearties and lassies and lads. All me hearties. Yes, it appears that piss. But I'll keep rambling. This might be a two-part video on the rant that yes, this is included under it says treatment and prophylaxis. I'll get to the meat of the point. Treatment and prophylaxis means prevention of. So prophylaxis is even though you might not have Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, or HIV dementia, or ischemic insults like trauma, age-related diseases, just the normal inflammation and disease states that take place as you get older, like breaking a bone and having it reheal, or inflammatory, it says, included in the patent. This is another site that's just explaining the patent. Simply, it says about, it's from the patent office apparently, and it's kind of like the patent office's own, mea culpa, he screwed up. But, the DEA classifies marijuana as a dangerous drug with no medicinal value. That classification contradicts mounds of evidence showing marijuana to be a very safe and effective medicine. Marijuana is more effective, much less expensive, and much safer than many drugs currently used in its place. Much safer than many drugs currently used in its place, imagine. Pharmaceutical companies do not want you to know. Chemists do not want you to know. Most chemists. I'm a good one. Marijuana can provide excellent relief for those who suffer from cancer, AIDS, glaucoma, multiple sclerosis, chronic pain, arthritis, rheumatism, asthma, insomnia, depression, And this is my own insert, but chronic psychological disorders stemming from age-related inflammatory or autoimmune diseases or ischemic insults, what have you. Non-psychoactive cannabinoids such as cannabidiol are particularly advantageous to use because they avoid toxicity that is encountered with psychoactive compounds at high doses. Useful in the method of present invention, eating the cannabis, or vaporizing with a volcano vape. But I think that's all I got for now as far as a rant on the subject. I mean, we all know, Department of Health, we know. We know that you're assholes, and cut it out, DEA. Department of Health lawyers, please sue them. Normal lawyers, shout out. Defense attorneys in the Tri-County area who have seen any arrests that I've had for simple possession or use, please do assist in my defense. I am an intelligent person who will also assist you in my defense. And I might be an indigent defender. Imagine that word, indigent, poor. But yes, I will have money at some point, and I will be going back to college and rant. Have a nice day, kiddies. And cats and people and old people and elderly and all you hungry brothers and minor 49ers and saints and bishops and cardinals and everyone else in the world. All the people of the world, have a nice day and much love to you. You're awesome.